Seattle Seahawks this past Thursday on Thursday Night Football. They have won the NFC West for the second time now. Remember, they won it against Seattle in 2019. We're here to talk about it all, talk about the 49ers season going forward, and is Kyle Shanahan the coach of the year? All after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 49ers RedZone podcast. I've got my co-host Marco here. Marco, how you doing, my man?
Hey, how's it going, Rohan, man? It feels good, man, to be back in the playoffs. That's definitely something of excitement to talk about right now, especially on a Sunday, watching some of these football games going on in the background and everything. It's just nice to finally be able to clinch early and then relax now. And now you're fighting for the number 2 seed. So a lot to talk about today,
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, when you talk about the 49ers story, it's just incredible in general, right? You're down to your third string quarterback, and you're the first team in the NFL now to clinch their division. Now, obviously, Kyle Shanahan said it. We all know it. The division isn't what we want necessarily. You want to go into the playoffs, make the playoffs, and then go forward in the playoffs. That should be the goal, no matter what here. And so that's definitely a something to talk about going forward. How does the season kind of end, and playoff picture potentially, how does it look?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love the culture that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have brought in, where in terms of like right away, Kyle Shanahan like, nah, that's something that we're supposed to do. We're supposed to win the division. You know what I mean? So the fact that the locker room understands that, the fact that the locker room understands that there's way bigger goal than winning the NFC West, which is obviously a great goal to have, right? Because it's the easiest way to get into the playoffs. Win your division and you're in. And I think that's the best way for the 49ers to win their division, get into playoffs. Now, seeding-wise, everything will figure out itself. All 49er fans out there, the number 2 seed when Minnesota was down 30-3-0. They end up losing, right? So, like, the thing is with a lot of, like, the seeding-wise, it'll play itself out. Whether the 49ers is a 2 seed, 3 seed, I'm not worried about it. They're going to get into the NFC Championship, in my opinion. Wild card round, they're playing the most likely would be the 6th or 7th seed. Those teams aren't that good. If we're being realistic, they're really not that good. If you look in terms of all the statistic-wise, they're not good teams. 49ers should get past them. And then divisional round, whoever they play, they'll probably get past them, to be honest. If it's the Cowboys, it's a throw it up in the air. But at that point, you're sort of – actually, it won't even be the Cowboys. It can't be the Cowboys unless
Cowboys could be round 1 choice, but Cowboys likely won't be a round 2 choice.
Unless, it won't, because so the 5, 6, 7.
It actually likely won't be a round 1 choice because the 49ers, the Buccaneers seem like they're just locked into that 4 seed. Cowboys
4 seed right there, they're locked. And then if you look at Dallas, they're probably going to be the 5 seed. It looks like, right? So if they're the 5 seed, if they probably beat Dallas, right? They probably beat Dallas. But then if Minnesota is playing as bad as they are and they get upset by the 7th seed, then the 49ers would end up hosting Dallas, right? So that's something like that you could kind of like see there. So I think that's very interesting in terms of I think they get into the NFC Championship. Now, the team I've been saying I don't want to see in the playoffs, absolutely the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Those are the 2 best teams in the NFC outside of the 49ers. So going into the last game, going into last week's game, we're going to talk about that whenever you're ready, just to get into that.
Nah, I mean, obviously a great game against the Seattle Seahawks. Just to start, what were your initial takeaways not only going into the game, but as the game progressed?
So happy holidays to everyone. So I thought that as the game was going on, I thought the offense struggled. A lot of people were saying the offense looked good. I thought opposite, right? Like I was like, oh, the offense looks solid, but they don't look like they did in the past couple weeks. Like they looked like they were struggling, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was Brock Purdy. I don't know if it was um, just the way that Seattle, because in divisional games it's so hard to play because one, everyone is balling, like everyone is playing out of their minds because you have an extra step to your you have extra like juice going, right? So for me,
Right.
it was one of those ones where like, dang, like this this game right now is playing some really good ball. I didn't know if it was Brock Purdy in the offense just struggling, but I felt like they struggled a little bit during that game. I don't know if you saw the same thing and you felt the same thing, but at times I felt like the offense was very stagnant.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a very fair assumption, right? When you look at the 49ers and how they scored, they had a very good first, like not their initial drive, but I believe it was their second drive, a good 9-play, 86-yard touchdown drive. That was their best drive probably of the entire game, right? When you look at the remainder of their drives, the second touchdown drive that they had was based off a fumble. They only had to get 6 yards. It was 2 McCaffrey carries for a touchdown score. And then the third drive that they scored on was the first drive out of the half, where it was a 2-play drive because George Kittle had a wide open touchdown catch where he essentially just was able to break one tackle, and that was all he needed. Great play call. But apart from those three drives, and really it's only two drives of significant yardage, 49ers punted a significant amount. And the reason that the offense to me felt stagnant was it wasn't that they were initially necessarily struggling on some drives. They got to midfield on some drives. They just weren't able to capitalize after getting near midfield. I remember early in the game there was a 3rd and 6. 49ers convert. Mike McGlinchey has a holding penalty. Then that drive just ends up in a punt at midfield. Later on, you punt at midfield. I know there was a 4th and something opportunity, a 4th and 1, I think, or 4th and 2 that Kyle Shanahan could have gone for. You punt again at Seattle's 42. That's where that stagnancy kind of came from. And I do think that several factors do attribute to it. We'll start with the first one, Brock Purdy's play. Brock Purdy, to me, it seemed like very clear he was hampered by some injury. Kyle Shanahan talked about it after the game.
Uh,
Uh, I'll explain why. I'll explain why.
mm,
He wasn't targeting the intermediate and deep portions of the field as much as you'd probably like. Now, he didn't have a great game. I didn't think he had a great game. He made some pretty boneheaded plays, right? The interception to Quandre Diggs that was dropped, that should have been an interception, was a poor throw just because you with your arm strength, you cannot be trying to fit that throw in. But it seemed like he did have some limitations to his game. I'm not going to make any proclamations that his arm strength should have been better. I have said he doesn't have a strong arm. He's probably the weakest of the three arms that the 49ers have in the quarterback room. But I did think that because of the limitations Brock Purdy had due to his injury, I thought that he was targeting primarily the shorter element of the field, which then leads to a bit of stagnancy because you can't really build on explosive plays. The only time he really targeted the intermediate and deep portions of the field and it was successful was when they were wide open because he wasn't able to get enough zip on the ball, but also he didn't want to necessarily throw those balls. So hell of a job from Kyle Shanahan to scheme receivers open and get just enough opportunities to have enough offense to win this game. But I did think that there were some limitations for Brock Purdy, which I thought stemmed from that oblique injury. What are your thoughts?
See, I don't think it was the injury. So, like, yeah, the injury is bothering him. But if we go back to the Miami Dolphins game, outside of the deep shot to Christian McCaffrey and then the deep shot to Brandon Ayuk, like obviously those were schemed up, right? Like those are like the where Kyle wanted him to go with the ball both times. Like that's literally one of the plays Kyle Shanahan came out and said, we literally put this play in the night before because we knew it would hit, right? Like we knew that, or the Miami Dolphins game, right? That he threw the double move, or was it the last week?
Uh, Last week. You're saying
So like right,
wait, the
so
double move? You're saying to Ayuk, right? Yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was
To
Tampa
Ayuk.
Bay. Tampa Bay.
So that was last week, right? So if you look at that double move, it was designed right? Like it wasn't like he was going through progressions and then even though he had pressure in his face and everything, like that's where the read was going. But then if you look at outside of that, like if we take a look at Brock Purdy throughout the entirety of the game, he kind of tends to, and there's nothing wrong. This is not bashing. This is not hating. This is not. I'm being 100% like real what I see. I'm trying to tell you like how I see it. For some that are gonna right away, they're gonna be in the comments saying I'm hating. I felt like for the most part he checked down the ball a lot. I mean, if we look at Christian McCaffrey, throughout the last couple games, Christian McCaffrey obviously against Tampa, they ran the ball a lot. 16 for 21, I believe, for 2 touchdowns, 185. Brock Purdy wasn't lining up the stat sheet, right? Like it was a good ass game. Like don't get me wrong, he played very well, but he was not lining up the stat sheet. And then if you look at the Miami Dolphins game, if we take a true look at what he did, Christian McCaffrey had 8 receptions, checking the ball down, checking the ball down, checking the ball down. Same thing last week. Everything's checked down. And I started noticing that during the Miami game. He's checking the ball down so often, which is a good thing. Take what the defense gives you. I agree. But I just don't like when everyone's like, oh, like that was a bad game from Brock Purdy. Well, no, that's who Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy is not going to air it out as often as we have seen from him against the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Miami Dolphins. That's not who he is. Like if even we go back to his college tape, he's not going to sling the ball like the Patrick Mahomes or whatever. Like he's not going to push the ball downfield. Like right, like his I believe his average depth of target or his average throw or whatever last week. I have to double check. I want to say it was 6 yards. That would be Jimmy Garoppolo.
It wasn't high. Yeah, it wasn't high.
It would have been by far Jimmy Garoppolo's lowest of his career, right? The 49er fan base is seeing something, and then what we're doing is we're trying to. The 49er fan base has been quarterback deprived, right? We haven't had a quarterback who looks good, doesn't turn the ball over, is just playing damn well, and our offense is humming, right? We haven't had that. So what we're seeing right now is the fan base saying, wow, we have a guy. But realistically, Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Brock Purdy. And a lot of you guys will be like, well, no, I'm not a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo. You guys know that. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is good, just not good enough. Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Brock Purdy, but everyone's going to say Brock Purdy is better because he's not turning the ball over. He's still having turnover-worthy plays. He's still doing things that Jimmy Garoppolo does. The mobility is a lot better, but I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy.
And I mean, that's something that I think we'll figure out over time, right? To me, the reason that I won't say that the performance we saw this past week was what Brock Purdy is indicative of is because that's the one lone performance where you haven't seen him execute at a high level. Brock Purdy is a system quarterback right now. That at least that's how he is in my eyes. If he has the ability to execute a system well as make the off-schedule throws that put him over the top at times. And so to me, right now, am I impressed by Brock Purdy? Yes, given that he was a 7th-round pick and the way that I saw him play in training camp, this is much better than the way I saw him play in training camp.
Oh,
I think he understands. Yeah, but I mean, I think he understands his limitations. I think that that's also a part of the reason why you see the ADOT being 6 yards per attempt throughout this entire year. And really, when you extrapolate the last 3 games, because it's really pushed by the Kansas City game, 5.4 yards per air yards per attempt in 12 against Miami, 5.2 against Tampa Bay, 5.8 against Seattle. And when you also take into account that he's throwing these deep passes to Brandon Ayuk, the deep pass to Christian McCaffrey, there were several deeper passes where they were wide open. Even the George Kittle play, that was a 15-yard pass in terms of air yards. You understand that Brock Purdy is throwing a ton of intermediate short passes and letting his receivers do the work. But why I'm impressed is because he's executing the system. And that's why I think that the 49ers do have a shot, because all you need is a quarterback to execute the system to a T and not turn the ball over. Brock Purdy hasn't had a propensity yet for turning the ball over. He's made some turnover-worthy plays, gotten lucky, obviously, in the Seattle game. But I do want to see, can Brock Purdy I think that, in a way, this is just how 49er fans are, right? You see the play, You start setting the unrealistic expectations, and then people start growing and expecting those unrealistic expectations and then get disappointed. I think it's important to set a baseline that is realistic, especially given the situation. And so I see it in the comment. They're pushing the the Montana narrative hard. I've seen Drew Brees comparisons. I've seen Russell Wilson comparisons and things like that. Here's what I'll say on Brock Purdy. I've been very impressed. His athleticism, that sneaky athleticism, has been a benefit for the 49ers for sure. Hasn't been something we've seen since week 2, but Brock Purdy is still a guy who can struggle when not executing the system at a high level, and part of that goes to his limitations with the arm strength.
So I was talking to a scout, right? I text my scout guy that I've talked to for a good while. I asked him essentially what he thinks of Brock Purdy, and he was like, "Well, I love Brock Purdy. I loved him out of college. I think he's a good quarterback." He goes, "If he would have been in like an Ole Miss style of offense, like an offense that's actually utilizing what he could do, he probably would have been drafted a lot higher." He goes,
Yeah.
"He's a system quarterback," and he says he's a system quarterback, and he fits Kyle Shanahan's system perfectly. He goes, "Now the thing is he's not doing anything out of the system." He goes, "He's not." He goes, "If you look at what he's done, it's not anything where he's going above and beyond from what the system is. He's running the system to a T." He goes, "Now, the issue is when in the playoffs, things get tighter, things get very good defenses, or you're playing like a better defense, a higher level team, and you have to do the extra. You have to get your first read is gone, your second read is gone. What do you do?" And he goes, and that's the point where I think Brock Purdy is going to fall apart, is in the playoffs, and it's going to suck because the narrative and the storyline that he has going right now is such a great story that everyone's going to be crushed because Brock Purdy fails in the playoffs. He goes, and then when you look at that, he goes, it's going to suck because everyone's going to be like, "Oh, Brock Purdy isn't good," right? Like everyone's going to say, "Oh, Brock Purdy wasn't as good as we thought." But realistically, what we're seeing right now is a quarterback playing in a system at a high level. He's playing good ball. Like, don't get me wrong, he's playing good ball. But that's why I said the last podcast is I'm tampering my expectations, because if we look at what he's done, it's nothing above and beyond. So I literally text. So I was texting my scout during the game or whatever, and someone else who is higher up in the NFL world, and I was like, "Hey man, like, what are you thinking of what he's doing right now?" He goes, "Interception's coming right now." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like right before he threw the pass that hit Diggs in the chest. So I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Just watch." Next thing you know, like 5 plays later, it hits Diggs in the chest and he drops it. And I was like, what are you seeing? Because he was at the game. I'm like, what are you seeing? He was, what I see is a quarterback that is check down, check down, check down, afraid to throw to the guy, like the tight window throws that are open in terms of NFL windows. He goes that are outside and deep
But that
numbers.
to me, the reason that I don't like, if that was another quarterback, I'd probably harp on that more. The reason I don't necessarily blame Purdy is because he can't make that throw. So I'm not going to blame him for not attempting a
But then
throw he understands he can't make.
But that's the thing, though, right? So, like, that's what you were saying. That's what's going to make him fall in the playoffs, because those
That's
throws
true.
are open throws. Like, those are open throws that NFL quarterbacks have to hit. I'm not saying he's not an NFL quarterback or in terms of that, but like, those are the throws that when you are there, like, people don't. When we watch football, fans see, and I see it too on the screen. Like, we see guys that are open as wide open, but realistically, every receiver is technically open in terms of NFL personnel wise, because realistically you don't need much to complete a pass in terms of space, right? So that's what he was talking about. He's like, the space is there. He just has to put it on in the right spot on his guys. He goes, that's what I see, and that's why he literally called it, like, literally 5 plays. And I have text messages I'll send you, like, screenshot of I sent to David and Jesse in a group chat we have. Like, hey, he's going to throw an interception in the next four or 5 plays. You know, exactly what my guy said. And I literally took what he said, and I was like, it pisses me off that he told me that, because I'm not trying to hear that homeboy's trying to throw an interception in the next 5 plays because I'm watching the damn game, and I'm a Niner fan. Like, and I told him, like, don't text me stuff like that again. Like, please don't do that. But I think what the Niners got going right now, the momentum, the energy, the defense that they have, it's phenomenal. I think they're gonna make some noise in the playoffs. How can you not? In terms of what they got going on, I'm excited, man. Every 49er fan should be. Ride the wave, man. Ride the wave. That's what I keep telling everyone. Ride the wave. I have people texting me, "What do you think this? What do you think of that?" Ride the wave. It's once in a lifetime. Do you get a seventh round kid um, who's Mr. Irrelevant come in, play well, win the NFC West, win a division, right? Win a division with a seventh round kid. Um, it's just very crazy to see. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those ones where I don't care how he plays. I just hope the Niners keep winning, man. I just really hope they keep winning.
Looking at some of the comments, you just talked about obviously Brock Purdy in the play and how he might fall in the playoffs. If Brock Purdy performs solid in the playoffs and makes plays, 49ers throwback says he's better than Jimmy. Would you agree that if Brock Purdy has a good, strong playoff performance, something Garoppolo hasn't had, would he be better than Jimmy? Or do you think that this is just unrealistic because you don't expect Brock Purdy to perform at a high level in the playoffs?
I'm not expecting to perform at a high level in the playoffs. I'm expecting Kyle to go. So everyone's gonna be shocked because he's gonna come out in the playoffs. He's gonna go run heavy. He's gonna play action, making things easy on Brock Purdy. And he's gonna do everything he can to utilize whether it's um, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell comes back, but you're gonna see a lot different kind of offense from Kyle in the playoffs. We've seen it in the past where he goes very run heavy in the playoffs and has his defense take him to the championship or the Super Bowl. That's what Kyle likes to do. It's a great recipe for success in the playoffs because your offensive line and your defense is always going to travel with you. Run games and defenses travel with you wherever the hell you go in the playoffs. Now, I don't expect Purdy to light it up. I think he'll be solid. I don't think he's going to be better than what Jimmy was in the playoffs. Now, if he's, let me reword that. I don't think he'll be better than what Jimmy was in the first 3 quarters of the playoffs. In the fourth quarter is where he needs to be better, because Jimmy Garoppolo would fall apart for similar reasons that Brock Purdy. Well, my guy is predicting Brock Purdy's going to fall apart with, right? Like he's saying, like that's just the stuff's there. But in the fourth quarter, those have to be made. And if he can't make those in the fourth quarter, then that's where things get dicey. That's where things get stuck. So I'm excited to see Brock Purdy because there's a legit conversation that Brock Purdy should be competing for quarterback 1 next year that people were having. I'm not buying it because I don't see the – check this out. The 49ers traded up to get a quarterback because they wanted to push the ball downfield. They wanted a quarterback that's not going to dink and dunk. They wanted a guy to take them over the top, right?
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is the same thing as Jimmy Garoppolo. Just mobile, right? Like that's literally what it is. So why would they hand the keys to Brock Purdy when it's like a mobile Jimmy Garoppolo? It's literally 2017 Jimmy Garoppolo when he was mobile. I'm not buying it yet. I think there should be a competition, but I don't think Brock Purdy's quarterback 1.
Okay. I mean, I think that right now it's a very intriguing topic. And I think a lot of things change in the playoffs, right? Teams that you see performing well in the regular season don't always come to perform in the playoffs. Now, it's unpredictable. The 49ers have a very talented defense, and they've got a very talented core of pass catchers and skill position players. So that formula you could expect, because this is the best group of skill position players and the best defense that Kyle Shanahan has had in his era as a head coach. Those are the factors that really boost this 49ers team, regardless of who plays at quarterback, and why many people say Kyle Shanahan, it doesn't matter who's at quarterback as long as he can fit inside the system. It's a fine fit. Now, there are some very serious contenders, obviously, in the playoffs. The Dallas Cowboys, we mentioned, the Philadelphia Eagles, we mentioned. But really, most teams, at least in this unpredictable NFL season, we've seen most teams can pull out a win at some point. And so, to me, I think that if Purdy performs solid, then that's a good thing, because the 49ers haven't necessarily had a strong playoff quarterback. But it's hard to believe that a guy of his caliber, a guy of his stature, would perform well in the playoffs because we just don't have that indication yet. And so to me, I do wonder if that'll happen. And also it's why you temper expectations on the 49ers when it comes to the playoffs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The way you put it, the way you worded it, I think is perfect because fans are. I love how fans are excited. I love the excitement, the energy around the fan base, energy around the 49ers is amazing. It's one of a kind, right? Absolutely one of a kind. But we got to remember, this kid was drafted in the 7th round, last in the draft for a reason. Like, let's be honest, like, he was drafted there for a reason, right? And I think that's the thing that worries me, right? Like, if Brock Purdy was as good as the fan base is saying, he wouldn't have been drafted the last in the NFL draft. And don't throw and when fans are like, well, what about Tom Brady? Don't throw Tom Brady's name out there when mentioning Brock Purdy. Don't do it. I don't care if he beat Tom Brady the first time any rookie quarterback has ever played him in the first start. Don't do that. Don't do that to the kid, man. Like, realistic, are we really gonna put Brock Purdy in the same name, same category as the GOAT? Hell no. Because you're putting expectations that you should not put on any quarterback when they come out of as their rookies, right? Like, what's literally, if you put, it's like putting a rookie NBA player and saying they're going to be LeBron. Don't do or Michael Jordan. Like, you don't do stuff like that, and that's why it bothers me when I see fans compare people to Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, or stuff like that. Like, I seen someone compare Brock Purdy to Drew Brees. Don't do that either. Those are some of the best quarterbacks we've seen. Compare him to Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo. That's who we should be comparing him to, because he needs to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, realistically, like that's what bothers me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't never buy into the comparisons, right? That's a Twitter talk. I mean, Twitter, that's where you get out the wild thoughts. That's a Twitter talk. Do I think that those, like, Drew Brees and all the different names that are thrown out there, I think a lot of 49er fans, like you said, are lingering or are just longing for some hope at the quarterback position. And so when you see a glimpse of the hope, you overreact. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to do, but I also think it's important to stay realistic. Though staying positive on Brock Purdy, I see this comment. The positive with Brock Purdy is obviously him and Lance, a solid quarterback room, if that is the quarterback room in 2023. Give me your thoughts on the quarterback room and the potential competition that could come out of it to make either player better.
Hey, they say iron sharpens iron, and it's a cliche, but I absolutely 100% agree with it, because not only is Brock Purdy gonna push Trey Lance to play his best, it's gonna have him at his sharpest mentally, right? Because if you look at what Brock Purdy is doing right now, Trey Lance is studying this. Trey Lance is with him. And then we heard Brock Purdy say it, like, he's helped me, right? Like, he's helping me. So not only is the competition going to be fun to watch, it's going to be actual good competition, because you have the mentals are going to be there. They're both going to be challenging each other mentally. Okay, I made this read, I made this throw, I made this. Can you do that, right? And it challenges them both mentally. Now, where Brock Purdy's going to have them at right now is going to be reps, live reps.
Yeah.
At that speed. But if you look at it, like, where Trey Lance will have him at is the talent. Like, he has a stronger arm. He could fit throws in certain windows. He could do certain things that Purdy might necessarily can't do. Like, where he kind of, like, more limited in terms of what he could throw and he can't throw. So I think that's where it's going to be interesting is, does Trey Lance use what Brock Purdy is doing right now to his advantage in terms of looking at what Brock Purdy is doing? He's not turning the ball over. He's not going crazy with numbers, right? Like, he's not doing all that. He's not going out for 300 yards. And that's what Trey Lance should learn you don't have to do in this offense. Go for 240, 220, and you look good. All right, you get a win. You look good for the first couple of training camps, whatever we want to look at. and then the same thing with the season. So it's going to be a fun ass battle. Great quarterback room. I think that's going to be a great situation to be in because we see Brock Purdy can win games. I think Kyle Shanahan can win games with Trey Lance as well.
I think that that's fair. And I mean, regardless of how you think about the quarterbacks, Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, this is going to be a very intriguing, not necessarily competition, but a way for both players to improve. So many years, the 49er fans have been harping for quarterbacks, the backup quarterback, which I think is one of the more overrated talks in the NFL. I've brought up the examples of how the Kansas City Chiefs, Chad Henne's their backup, Matt Barkley backs up Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? When you talk about the top quarterbacks, really their backups aren't that damn good because you don't expect to go to your backup quarterback. The reason you're in a Super Bowl, the reason you're in the playoffs is because of the starter. It's not because of the backup, which is why it's an overrated talk. However, when you have two quarterbacks that you trust can win you games, especially with the 49ers tendency in how they quarterbacks become injured, that is an asset, especially at the especially at the contract situation. Those are them two are at. Brock Purdy is extremely cheap. He's a 7th-round pick. Trey Lance is obviously making the $8 million or whatever, but still in today's quarterback standards, that's cheap. It's likely that the two of them combined still rank amongst the bottom 10 in terms of the salary cap taken up by a quarterback room. And so I'm interested to see how each helps each other grow. I do think you can make the argument right now that Brock Purdy has looked better than Trey Lance in the games that he's played. I just don't know if you can say one is definitively better because you have such a small sample size, which is why it's going to be fun to watch them play next year in training camp, in the offseason, in OTAs and everything, because it's really just another chance. They're both, while Purdy obviously has the college reps, they're both relatively new in the NFL landscape. So it's going to be a fun battle, but it's also reassurance that the 49ers have some solidarity with both of their quarterbacks and some insurance essentially in their quarterback room next year.
And I think that's the biggest thing, like what you're saying right now is like, not only does this give the 49ers like a good quarterback room, you start talking about like the numbers and stuff, like throwing those around, like, right? Which is very key because people were trying like, so during the season, people were saying 49ers should bring back Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like they're like, they should pay Jimmy Garoppolo as the highest backup quarterback and have him compete in camp with Trey Lance. But now you don't have to do that. You ride with these two. You have a little bit of cap space to do a little bit of things. How's it going, my man? So you have a little bit of things, like a little bit more money to kind of like bring in another receiver, another tight end, whatever they want to do, right? Like defensive lineman, safety, whatever. They have a little bit of wiggle room to throw money around if they restructure and do a little bit of things, right? So I think that's where it gets a little bit more interesting. You make your team better now, right? Like you have two quarterbacks that could do stuff, which is great to have. I wanted to ask you, do you think the 49ers could essentially, so there's this thing, right, where someone presented the question. I forgot who it was. It was on Twitter. They presented the question. I don't know how I feel about the question. I think it's an interesting topic. So I wanted to ask you this without you knowing what the question was.
Yeah, I'm curious because I might have missed this on Twitter.
Would you be willing to trade Brock Purdy if someone offers you a pretty decent pick and you could go draft the rookie?
Would I want to trade Brock Purdy for a rookie quarterback? I believe is what Marco said. We'll wait for him to come back. Let's just adjust this real quick. There we go. But while Marco comes, while he comes back, question is, would you trade Brock Purdy for a mid-round pick and then select a rookie quarterback either in this year or the next year, whatever it may be, or use that second-round pick elsewhere? I want to hear your thoughts, everybody in the chat, on that question, on whether you would take Brock Purdy for a mid-round pick as we bring Marco back on.
My bad.
I want to hear your...
Someone needed to come into the room to grab something real quick. But so the question I saw it on the timeline, I was like, wait, this is an interesting question, right? Like, whoa, like, would you be willing to trade? And then like the question was, it was like a third or fourth. I forgot what people were saying. I was like, hey, like,
It's definitely a question that
That's
you have to
intriguing.
you gotta think about it, right? And to me, it also shows two things. One, it shows the respect that teams have or people have for Brock Purdy because he was a seventh round pick. You're essentially flipping a seventh from a year before into a third round pick. And also, I mean, it just shows the way the 49ers were able to develop him. And so to me, here's my response. I think that pick would be valuable. I do. I think the 49ers have shown a propensity for hitting on some of those non-first round picks. And also draft classes recently have kind of become a little more talented. I don't know necessarily at the quarterback position, but you've seen an influx of talent in the recent years. Drafts contingent on heavy depth because some players stay back, but a ton of players are moving forward. Whatever the reason may be, last year was one of the more deeper classes. You saw a good amount of players hit undrafted free agency. You also saw players fall more than the media expected. To me, I personally would not trade that pick or trade Brock Purdy for that pick. I think the value of having a cost controlled quarterback, especially with the 49ers situation for the next 3 seasons, is I think that value is just higher, especially if you believe, and the 49ers do believe this, that Brock Purdy is a starting caliber quarterback. That you have a top 32 quarterback making under $1 million a year that you can have for the next 3 years. That is one of the best backup situations possible, maybe comparable to Baltimore and Tyler Huntley, in a situation like that where you have a young quarterback that's making cheap money, but he's got more cost controlled years. I think that's it's an intriguing topic, but I would personally keep Brock Purdy because not only does Brock Purdy bring value on his own, but we talk about competition. Competition is extremely vital, and especially with a young quarterback, you want someone to push him. You want someone, especially with that experience. I know you normally do want a veteran quarterback, but if you're not able to land a veteran quarterback, Brock Purdy would be a good guy to compete against Trey Lance. It would bring competition, and them two have differing parts of their skill set that really bring value out of them, be it the intangibles or the talent itself. And so I think that I wouldn't be trading Brock Purdy for that pick, although it is an intriguing debate and it shows the respect for Brock Purdy.
Exactly. Like I wouldn't do it only because like you could win with Brock Purdy. Like it's you could do it and it's a cheap quarterback room. So that's what like I thought it was intriguing. Like, that's a good question. Like because like if you ask the 49er fan base this right now, they'll say no. But if you ask the
Yeah,
fan base, like if he has a bad game in the playoffs and then like you present that question, they're all gonna say yeah. Like if you look at on
probably.
Twitter in terms of Twitter wise, kind of some in the chat say that's why they don't have Twitter. But like when I seen the question, I'm like that's very interesting because if you could turn a seventh round quarterback into a third round pick, that's a win. And especially if you do it like, but you don't do it now. What you do is you hold on to him until kind of like the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, right? Where the 49ers
Right.
got Jimmy Garoppolo from New England his last year, right? So that's when I was like, that's intriguing. That's very intriguing because you put yourself in a situation to not only gain a pick, but it just shows that you're drafting well, you're developing well, um, and it's kind of how you win more in terms of you're constantly developing players that you're sending them off, but you're replacing them with someone. And
Hmm.
I wouldn't be. This is why I kind of would accept if someone sent me a third round pick, right? Like someone was like, "Hey, we're sending you a third round pick." You kind of can't really say no in terms of what they're offering you. So I would kind of say I would be inclined to say yeah because what I could do then is there's a very good situation where you could get a quarterback like Jake Hayner from Fresno State.
Hmm.
A lot of you people don't know how good Hayner is. Watch the Senior Bowl practices. Keep track of what the Senior Bowl does. He's gonna look very damn good at the Senior Bowl.
But
You
in
could get a guy
general,
like that.
there are a good amount of those type of quarterbacks where you can get in the second and third round, especially, you know, with how valuable the quarterback position is. My only question would the 49ers want to do this process again? Would they want to spend another draft pick on the position and then develop that player? If you're drafting in the second and third round and looking at a quarterback, you're likely not necessarily looking at a limited ceiling pro-ready option. You might be looking at a pro-ready option, but you'd look for a player who still possesses some of that ceiling. And I wonder, do they want to go through the process of redeveloping another quarterback, or would they want a more pro-ready quarterback, which Brock Purdy at that point would probably be, given his year of experience this year and the 4 years he had as a starter in college.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's the most valuable thing that I think is a reason why you don't do it is because of the value that Brock Purdy has in terms of he knows the system. He's been in the league for a couple of years. So that's why it's for me, I wouldn't do it, but I'd be like, if you're throwing a third round pick at me, kind of makes me want to say, yeah, you know
You
what I
got to
mean? Because
think
like
about it. You got to think about it
you got to
because
think
it's a
about it.
third round pick.
Yeah, it's a third round pick, and if you're sure that Trey Lance is the guy, like if the 49ers are 100% sure Trey Lance is the guy, like they know, like, hey, we just freak injury, whatever, and we know he's the guy, you kind of do it. Like, right? Like if you're gonna do it, you do it. Because that third round pick could be a free safety. It could be a defensive tackle that if you look at the 49ers room, they're gonna need defensive tackles next year. Charles Omeni,
Right.
who probably leaves and gets paid pretty well. Kerry Hyder probably leaves, might come back. Who knows? You got to re-sign Kevin Givens. You got to bring there. A
There's
lot
a
of pieces are moving.
lot of players that are going to be free agents. Like, for example, this past game, the 49ers had all 9 of their star defensive linemen get us pressure this past game. Incredible. Great amount of depth, but significant amount of players on that depth are not going to be here next year, or at least are going to demand a higher salary than they currently have.
Absolutely, and I think that's for me is where it becomes intriguing. And I thought the question I was like, that's a question I'm gonna ask Rohan because not only did I not want to ask you through text messages, I wanted to catch you off guard to see how you would answer that one without having to think about it. Because when I first saw it, I was like I had to think. I was like, damn, because it puts you in a situation where you're like, hey, you could go sign a backup quarterback like Jacoby Brissett if he was willing to be a backup quarterback for a year. There's a lot of backup quarterbacks you could sign that are Andy Dalton, right? Like there's you could go get a guy, like right, Andy Dalton, right? It's Andy Dalton, but realistically, if Kyle could win with Brock Purdy, he could win with Andy Dalton. So for me,
That's
it's
true.
intriguing. It's very if he could win with like right, like he's
He
winning
could win with a majority of starting level quarterbacks in the NFL.
So for me, that's why I thought it was intriguing. But let's go a little bit into the 49ers next game, right? They host the Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
So this will be Brock Purdy's best team he plays against defensively. That so far. What do you think?
I think because Tampa Bay was injured, so I think you can make the argument. Yeah.
Because Tampa Bay had
Vita Vea
3.
went out. That was huge.
Vita Vea went out, which was huge because the 49ers started running the ball. They ran for 115. I think he ran for 115. Christian McCaffrey.
And then they also had the 2 safeties out because when you looked in Week 13, Miami's an all right defense. They're not elite. They're not bad. Christian Wilkins dominated in the interior. Zach Seiler, Christian Wilkins both did. They gave Purdy fits at times and forced him to make some of those off-scheduled throws. Now we talk about the Commanders. What's kind of your thoughts on their defense and on the test, like 49ers throwback says, about being a good test for Purdy?
No, it is a test for Purdy, and if people don't see it, then they're not understanding how good of a defense the Washington Commanders are. Let me double check. So I don't know if anyone understands DVOA, but I'm gonna give a real quick explanation of what DVOA is. It is pretty much essentially it is the defensive adjusted value over average, which they do like a deeper in depth. Like it's the best statistic, the metric you could look at for evaluating teams, in my opinion. It's truer than most statistics, and every time I look at it, it stays true. So Washington is 9th defensively. So if you that is pretty damn good. That means this is a top 10 defense. So now this is the best test that he's gonna have, and this will give a lot of answers. A lot of answers.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, when you talk about Washington, strong defensive front. That's what the offensive line is going to have to battle because they got Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen. I believe Montez Sweat is going to be active, and so they're going to have their entire front four healthy. They've got a strong group there, and that's what leads the charge for them. A strong Commanders team, which, if we're being honest, has relied on their defense to get them to the position they are right now. They're 7-5-1 in the playoff hunt, and they could win if they win again today. I believe they would make the playoffs in the current picture, and that's a talented defense. Another test, and remember, the wide receivers this past game struggled. Without Deebo Samuel, the wide receivers did not have much action. Brandon Ayuk only limited to 2 catches, had a crucial drop and a holding penalty. Juwan Jennings led all receivers with 32 yards. It was George Kittle who had his biggest game. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but overall, you're going to have a depleted receiver core without Deebo Samuel, with players having to step up against a strong Commanders defense.
And the thing is with the situation that's going on, right? So like the Commanders get back for, I believe it'll be his first game this week. Chase Young. Chase Young is a stud, dude. So that's another piece to that defense. And I believe we're talking about the Bucs game right now. The not the Bucs, the Bucs. They had their 2 safeties out and a starting corner, and then they lost their defensive tackle the first drive of the game. That's four key players on their team. So this will for sure be the biggest test for Brock Purdy. I think he can handle it. I don't see why he can't. I mean, everyone knows how good of a quarterback he is, that he's been showing he is. So I don't see why he can't handle it. And I'm excited, really excited to see the 49ers compete and play against a Commander team who is going to be very challenging because you can't run the ball as well as you're going to want to, because they have 2 stud defensive tackles, Deron Payne and Allen. Right. That defense is a very good defense. So it's going to be a lot more weight on Brock Purdy's shoulders, and I'm excited to watch him compete at a high level.
No, most definitely. And when we talk about Brock Purdy, as the center's perfect, and when we talk about Brock Purdy, we've got to talk about Kyle Shanahan, lead to kind of the question of the day. Kyle Shanahan, he's done a good job now developing Brock Purdy. What's your thoughts? Is he the coach of the year?
Dude.
Or at least he's a candidate. I mean, he's definitely a candidate.
No, he's not a candidate. He's not a candidate. He's the damn coach of the year. I don't understand how you could put anyone else in there. I mean, in the conversation. Like, there's a few coaches I guess you could put in the conversation. I guess Dan Campbell, his team, they're losing right now, I believe. But he's been coaching his tail off. If they could keep winning, that is a guy you put in the conversation. Absolutely put in the conversation.
Nick Sirianni?
Nick Sirianni, you could put him in the conversation. But
Mike McDaniel?
You put him in the conversation. You could put him in the conversation, for sure.
Mike McDaniel. What's your thoughts on that?
No.
Because we've had all the talk about, obviously, Kyle's proteges being better than Kyle, all that kind of stuff. And look how it is now.
I don't think you could put Kyle Shanahan or Mike McDaniel in the conversation.
Who else? Vrabel was an early winner, but the Titans have lost a good amount recently. I don't think he's going to be in the running anymore. I don't know. Because the Vikings, are you going to give O'Connell the coach of the year with the
they could barely win games, man. They could barely win games.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're
so,
it's
I guess I mean it's really down to I'd say Shanahan, Sirianni. Could you put Mike McCarthy in the running? Because they're 10-3. Would you put Mike McCarthy at least in the running? I don't think he'd win it over Sirianni.
You could, because he won. He also did what Kyle Shanahan did. He won with a backup.
He won 4-1 with the backup quarterback. Yeah.
So like you can put him in there. But I think the way Kyle Shanahan, so Kyle didn't not only has he won with the backup quarterback, Kyle Shanahan is winning with a 7th-round rookie quarterback that everyone is calling Mr. Irrelevant on draft day. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
where things are like, damn, he really did his thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to not say he's coach of the year. It's hard.
It really is. It really is. Real quick, Mariah, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you. But the other topic, obviously, with Kyle Shanahan being coach of the year, a huge part of the team has been 49ers defense. D'Amico Ryans is going to get head coaching opportunities this offseason with the amount of potential opportunities, but also D'Amico Ryans, he had it last year. Do you think D'Amico Ryans would get a head coaching job? Do you think he gets the coaching job this year that he wants? Because remember, he had the opportunity last year. Didn't seem like he pulled himself out of the race, I believe, in Minnesota. Do you think he goes this offseason, or do you think he'll wait again?
What team's offering it to him? That's the biggest question.
Good question. That's a good question. So, I mean, if we go through it, right?
Same thing that kind of Robert Saleh did, right?
Yeah.
Remember when Robert Saleh, everyone thought Robert Saleh was leaving, and then he came back because he wanted the right situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard for defensive coaches to go to a situation and win, if that makes sense. Because the moment your defense isn't playing well or your offense starts to struggle, owners don't care about defense.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Defense
it's an offensive league right now.
Defenses ain't bringing fans to their stadium. That's not the goal. Like, the goal is literally for owners, score points, make everything look fun, because that is exactly what the owners want. So for me, I think it's going to end up being a situation where I think he might. It depends if he's offered it. Like, let's look at the teams that suck in the NFL.
So Denver will likely have a new head coach next year, but I don't think he'd go to Denver with their situation with the draft capital, and obviously being the problems being on the offensive side of the ball. I'd say the Texans would likely look. The Colts would likely look for a new coach next year. That would make 3. I don't know about
Carolina. Carolina's one.
Carolina will. That's 4.
I think Carolina has a good amount of draft picks too. So you could. So, like, if we're Indy, I think Indy's a good option. Good defensive front. Good defensive stuff's already built there. So you have a lot to work with.
Indy seems right now like probably the most probable of the 4 I mentioned, right? Out of Indy, Houston, Indy's a little better than Houston in terms of infrastructure. And then you talk about Carolina. Carolina's all right too. I'd say Indy's a little more better built than Carolina, but yeah.
So, like, if the team has, like, the right pieces, like draft picks, a decent foundation, like, let's be real. Let's take a look at Indy's foundation, right? They have Defoe, who's still there. I mean, people are saying they might trade him because of the cap hit. You got on the offensive side, you got Michael Pittman, a very good receiver. You also have a stud guard. They have a decent offensive line, a good running back, Jonathan Taylor, no quarterback. This defense is good linebackers. They got 2 good linebackers. That's a very intriguing situation for them. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a foundation. If you look at Carolina, no quarterback. DJ Moore is a very good receiver. In my opinion, no running back. Defensive line and defensive defensive line is stacked. They have a good corner, a good safety. Decent, maybe. That's maybe. But I think you have a lot more to work with in Indianapolis than Carolina. What are your thoughts?
I'd say Indy is probably the best situation. Now, obviously, if D'Amico Ryans, there's a lot that goes into it. D'Amico Ryans will want to work with a GM that he probably feels comfortable with. Irsay, obviously, is a guy who seems to be pretty hands-on, might want to influence decisions. Does D'Amico Ryans want to do that? Not necessarily sure. So it's tough. But on the question, does he get a head coaching job over Bieniemy? I would say he'd get an opportunity over Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy, I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's going to be a head coach. It just doesn't, at least in the NFL rankings, be it because of the off-field issues, but more likely just because he doesn't do well in interviews. He's interviewed with
See,
a significant amount
I'm
of
gonna
head
hold you
coaches.
there. I'm gonna hold you there.
Okay.
I don't want to say he doesn't do well in interviews,
But
only because
I'm just going to say he's interviewed with about half the league right now and still has not landed on a finalist opportunity. That's just what, to me, I don't understand. Like, I don't know about that.
because are we really saying that he doesn't do good in interviews because we're not there, right? Like,
No, that's
so
it's speculation. It's
yeah,
speculation
so it's
based on
that's why
league
I don't want you.
like league
That's why
sources and stuff.
that's why I'm trying to like pause you on that, only because of the situation where we're not there. So it's kind of hard for us to say, yeah, he doesn't do that well, right? Like, I mean, it might be, but it's a speculation. I mean, I think the reason why he hasn't gotten a coaching job is one, when he was a head coach in college, there was issues there. There's been issues like personality wise issues that they're public.
Mhm.
So I think that's the reason why he hasn't gotten the offer. But I think that's going to change this year. Mike McDaniel had an issue. Everyone knows he was an alcoholic, right? He did his rehab
Right.
stuff. He got right. Eric Bieniemy hasn't done anything in a long time, right? He
Correct.
hasn't had the opportunity to coach in the NFL. He's finally calling plays, I believe, in Kansas City without Tyreek Hill, which is a lot harder to do
Is he the
than
play
with
caller
Tyreek Hill.
or is it Reed?
I believe he is the play caller this year.
Got it.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty positive he is the play caller in Kansas City.
Okay.
So now that he has that play calling experience, there's going to be a team that's like, hey, he actually been killing it with Kansas City lately. They don't have Tyreek Hill. They're still putting up points, but he has Patrick Mahomes, right? So I've been saying the team that should hire him, I said it last year, the team that should hire him, the Houston Texans. Houston
Really?
Texans.
Okay.
Because if the Houston Texans most likely get the first overall pick, right? Most likely is going to happen. If you could draft Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud or Will Levis, whatever Bieniemy thinks is the best quarterback option for running that same system, you do it. He has a track record of calling good a system. I don't know. I think this year he finally gets his opportunity.
It would be interesting. And I mean, there like we said, there are going to be opportunities for head coaches. Moving forward with some of the questions that we see, 49ers throwback, just an ask about our favorite play from the Seahawks game. Do you have one in mind?
Favorite play? I'm gonna go with the beautiful double pump, fake one way, fake the other, dot to freaking George Kittle. Only because I saw on the timeline that is a Bill Walsh play he ran with Steve
Oh,
Young.
really?
So like the
Mhm.
history is there, like on the 49ers. So I really liked seeing that. I would probably also say there was a sack that Nick Bosa had, and like the way he finished the sack and the way he was just dude, just like anything Nick Bosa does is impressive. So I would say that touchdown pass. And you?
I'll go with the other touchdown play to George Kittle. Not necessarily because of the outcome, although obviously a touchdown's good. Just the play design to get George Kittle, a guy who has been double covered for so many times this year because they want to bracket and take away that middle of the field. To get him that open on a play like that, it was a good play design and really good execution overall to result in the way that resulted.
Bro, I can't lie though. To be honest, Kyle's low key been in his bag. Like
He has been in his bag. Like, in a way, I mean, obviously this isn't true, but in a way, it's like Kyle's like, damn, I'm down to my third string quarterback. This is my time to shine. It's not even Brock's time to shine. It's my time to shine because receivers have been open. And this is also against, like, it's funny. There's the phrase that everybody uses against players. With more game film, you're going to be able to figure them out. Kyle Shanahan been running this for like how many years now? Maybe 8-10 years, still finding ways to be creative and still just can't be figured out really offensively.
And that's the thing that's crazy because, like, if you really look at like what Kyle Shanahan is doing right now, so 2 touchdowns he had, one to both touchdowns to George Kittle. Kittle, bro, there was no one next to him for like 10 yards. Like that is insane. Like it's ridiculous on how good he has been going like off. Like it's Kyle Shanahan, man. His not only his pass plays, scheming up a wide open freaking long touchdown run for Christian McCaffrey, or it wasn't a touchdown, a long run, but set up a touchdown. Man, there's it's just crazy how everything is falling into place on Kyle Shanahan, going from a coach that people said fire at the beginning of the season. Remember when everyone was saying fire Shanahan, fire Shanny, and then next thing you know, freaking everyone's like, oh my god, Shanahan is coach of the year, right? Like how everything has changed so fast for the 49ers organization and the fan base. It's just a beautiful thing to see, man. Are you excited about how not only has Kyle Shanahan changed things up, but how he's been coaching like in the last couple of weeks? Because not only I think has he learned a lot of things in this season, going from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback, and instead of changing his system for each of these quarterbacks like he normally would, he's just calling his regular system.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In a way, he's understood that he doesn't need to. It's not that he doesn't need to adapt to player tendencies because he does do that, but he's also found a way to make his system universal, be able to work with whatever. Obviously, the change from Trey to Jimmy was huge. You wipe out half the playbook. You saw the little offensive lumps, but really it was plainly execution. I thought Kyle Shanahan was doing not a hell of a job, but a pretty darn good job in the first half of the season when the offense was struggling. It's just execution was the issue. Now that does fall back on the head coach, but once Christian McCaffrey came, he's done a good job. And as for this question right here, 49ers Throwback says, do you think Kyle Shanahan's improved as a head coach? Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, he's even talked about it in interviews how he did struggle with certain things at times earlier in his career. I think he has improved as a head coach. I think there will be a part of the fan base that just won't be content with what Kyle Shanahan can accomplish. But I've said it. I think he's the next longtime coach for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think that he gets fired within the next 5 years at all. And I think that he's the guy for the 49ers, barring any unforeseen circumstances, really.
What's going to suck, though, to be honest with you, like what's really going to suck is we're really going to have fans if Kyle Shanahan doesn't win the Super Bowl or win. We're going to have fans talking shit about Kyle Shanahan, but they're not going to really like put into perspective on what he's doing. Like, winning with the 7th-round quarterback, yes, you have the best defense in the NFL. But getting into the playoffs, getting all that, it's crazy because it's one of those ones where Kyle Shanahan is doing a phenomenal job with what he has offensively. That's why he traded for Christian McCaffrey, because he knew his offense needed something like that. Like what he's doing, shout out to him. It's impressive.
Yeah. No, definitely. And
so, quick question.
Ooh.
What teams in the NFC scare you the most?
In terms of the 49ers.
Or what? I shouldn't say what teams. I'm going to give you one team. What team scares you the most?
If I'm going ranking-wise, there are 2 that scare, with Dallas being at number 1. I know Dallas is the 5 seed. They're going to have to play on the road if they face the 49ers in the playoffs. But I think Dallas is the most complete team, and the number 1 thing is Dallas has a more veteran team than my number 2, the Eagles. And I don't know which one you'll pick. I'd assume it's one of the 2, but I do think that Dallas right now is just they are playing fairly well. And I think that regardless, I just think that they're a team that can compete in a general basis. They've improved their team. They have solid pass catchers. They have obviously a quarterback, but a strong offensive line. Last year, the offensive line suffered with injuries, wasn't as big. They have a strong top 10 probably offensive line, top 10 defensive line with multiple players in help of Micah Parsons. The Philadelphia Eagles, in my opinion, have the better roster. I just think Dallas is a little more of a veteran team, and that matters a little more in the playoffs. We've seen it in years past.
So I really like the Dallas Cowboys, right? Because like you said, they're a complete team. Their defense is good, but it's also bad at the same time. Like they're playing. Don't get me wrong, Jacksonville Jaguars. I have them on the back of the screen right here. You guys can't see, but the score is 34-34 in overtime. They allowed Jacksonville to do whatever they want offensively, and they're like, so that's what's like. Okay, their defense is good, but then they're not good. But then they could run the ball. They got a decent quarterback. They got weapons on offense. But the team that scares me the most by far is Philly, because you're gonna have to go to Philly in the cold. They could run the ball with their quarterback. They could throw the ball. Their defense is solid. It's nothing special. They got AJ Brown, and I saw a comment someone in the comments saying Charvarius Ward could lock up any receiver, or name like 10 receivers off or something like that. Charvarius Ward is good. I'm not gonna say he's gonna lock up receivers. DK is kind of like a one-trick pony in a way. Like
he's still pretty good. He's still good.
He's pretty, but the way Charvarius Ward was playing him takes away who DK is. Play the deep ball and force everything to go underneath, and you're gonna break on his routes because he doesn't get out of his breaks as fast as Charvarius Ward gets out of breaks. So the way he played him was phenomenal. Like he played them how every corner should play him. Now it's kind of hard when he runs a 4.3 and you're not that fast, but yet Charvarius Ward is fast. We keep up with him. But playing guys like AJ Brown who are physical over the middle, guys like that, like Dallas Goedert who comes back. They also got Devontae Smith. So they got three good pass catchers. They got Miles Sanders who can run the ball. Jalen Hurts with the 49ers has always struggled with mobile quarterbacks running. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are the legit team that I'm scared about.
I think that's a fair argument, and I think the Eagles are a top team. Obviously, they're likely to get home court or home field advantage for the entire playoffs, which is big because it's a tough environment to play in, especially in the winter, cold winter. Fans, the environment there is going to be a tough environment to play in, and a tough challenge for a rookie quarterback to kind of go out there and execute.
And it might not be a rookie quarterback. It might be Jimmy Garoppolo.
It could. Yeah, I mean,
He's
it's the 49ers. Nobody knows.
If it's Philadelphia, if 49ers are in Philadelphia, it might be Jimmy Garoppolo because he might be back. Like,
we'll see.
The thing that the 49ers have been apparent about, not putting Jimmy Garoppolo on the IR, is that they trust Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo both. Like, and it's kind of also, too, at the same time, like, at this point, you're down defensive lineman. You need an extra defensive lineman. Not putting Jimmy Garoppolo kind of says we don't trust Brock Purdy that much in the playoffs. We want Jimmy to be back. Like, think about like what that also says too, right?
Yeah.
It's what do you think that says by not putting him on or bringing up a defensive tackle?
I mean, when we talk about it, the 49ers are pretty darn depleted right now in terms of depth. Like, it's almost on a week-to-week basis they have their inactive list set, right? Based on injuries. I think it says two things. I think, number one, it does say that they are somewhat confident that Garoppolo could return at some point this year, despite the reports, despite the uncertainty, not only behind his recovery, but also whether he wants to play. But also, too, yeah, I mean, it does show that they might want Jimmy Garoppolo back, be it as a starter, be it as a backup. It seems like they would want Jimmy Garoppolo back, or at least some quarterback back, so that they can be well insulated in the quarterback room going into the playoffs.
And for me, that's the best part, right? Like, is we don't know teams don't know what the 49ers are going to have in the playoffs. Because at that point, Kyle Shanahan could be having Jimmy Garoppolo take reps or out there, right? Like, hey, are you good enough to take reps so teams don't know who we're playing? That's where it's very interesting. Like, because now you're game planning for Jimmy then you get mobile Brock, where Kyle's doing a lot more play action boots, and now you're having to change your system, your game plan around because you're preparing for Jimmy Garoppolo. So
Yeah.
that's what's interesting. I cannot believe the freaking Dallas Cowboys. Someone just said they lost, so I'm very curious
Oh, really?
on how
Damn.
they lost. Because right now my TV is behind. So I am very curious on if
Oh,
Dak Prescott just threw a
also,
pick six.
just got to give a shout out to Detroit, bro, because Detroit is 7-7. They beat the Jets. So Detroit. Oh wow, Dak threw a pick 6.
Oh yeah,
Damn,
pick six.
that's crazy. But Detroit is 7-7. I tweeted out just a feeler. 49ers Detroit, 2 seed versus 7 seed potentially round 1. That could be a fun matchup.
Hey,
We
that
can
team
pick
scares
6.
me, man.
Detroit is a
That team's
team
good.
to watch because they're a team. They're one of those teams, those boomer bust teams. They're a feeler, like they can beat any team on a weekly basis with the offense and also an improved defense recently. They can beat any team. Obviously, they can lose to probably any team as well, but it'd be interesting.
Bro, Tayshaun is legit, dude. Or not Tayshaun, Ben Johnson. Oh, why was I saying Tayshaun?
Oh yeah,
Ben
Ben
Johnson is
Johnson.
legit. He's legit.
He's a guy who could get head coaching jobs. I think Steichen of Philly will get head coaching consideration. D'Amico, Ben Johnson could be up there too.
Ben Johnson is the guy that I'm like, damn, like if
I
you
don't
are a
think
team,
Detroit should let him leave by any means. I think Detroit got to keep Ben Johnson.
how do you keep him though? Like every team should be after him.
Yeah.
Like realistically,
Do you
every
think Ben
team should be
Johnson? I
after
mean, this
him.
is way off topic, but Ben Johnson to the Chargers. Ben
I
Johnson
wouldn't
giving
mind
Justin
that. But then
J.
again,
Herbo his
I
system.
also could see them going after Sean Payton.
Oh yeah, because Sean Payton said,
Even
or
though
not
I
said,
think,
but
is it true that if Sean Payton comes back, someone's gonna have to send New Orleans
yes.
draft capital?
If he comes back before 2024, his contract is till 2024. So if he unretires, the Saints own his rights until 2024.
And then someone has to trade a draft pick for him.
Yeah.
Damn, what is it going to cost to get freaking Sean
It's going to
Payton?
cost a first-round pick. It's definitely going to cost
Do
a
you think
first-round
so?
pick. Yeah. Because we've seen this
So
before.
then does
I think
is a team willing to trade a first rounder for him?
I mean, the Rams, they don't give a they don't care, right? Like, I don't know. I think there will be a team though willing to trade for a first-round pick just because when you see the success, for an example, just this is a way different example, but when you see the success that old coaches have had, teams want that success. That's why Jacksonville went and got Doug Peterson, and they're doing fairly well. He's developed Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence looks hella good. Last 5 weeks, Trevor Lawrence has been balling. But I think that a team would want that type of head coach. So we'll see.
It's going to be very intriguing because you for sure get a guy that could develop a quarterback, has a good system that he's had in place. I'm interested to see what happens because not only do you get a good coach, you get a leader, you get someone who, like you're saying, what Doug Peterson has done for Trevor Lawrence. Dude just threw 4 touchdowns and 1 interception today. He balled out. You believe he had 318, 4 touchdowns and interception. He also had a fumble though.
Yeah.
So but the development from the last year to this year is night and day. And I think if I'm a team, I don't know, first round's a lot. Maybe a second rounder. I don't know if I would do first because if you're the Chargers, a first rounder for the team that they have, their defense sucks still. They're as a GM and everything, you got to look at that. Like the defense still sucks. They've tried to get better there. Justin Herbert could use one more weapon on offense, whether it's a receiver or another backup running back, because you don't want Austin Eckler taking all those carries and all those passes and everything. So I'm very intrigued now that you say first round pick. I'll be looking out for that.
Let's see. But hey, I think this is a good way to end the episode. A little head coach talk at the end, a little fun outside the NFL talk as well. Guys, everybody who tuned into the chat, thank you so much for tuning in. Marco, obviously appreciate you always for coming on. A fun show today. Be sure to check us out. Subscribe to both channels. You'll see if you guys are on my channel, be sure to subscribe to the 49ers RedZone channel and then vice versa as well. But guys, we appreciate it. Any last thoughts, Marco?
Yeah, if you are in the fantasy playoffs, good luck. I'm having like anxiety attacks over here. So
I
like
am too.
I'm
I
up
am too.
I'm up 90 to 85. The guy I'm playing is projected 135.8. I'm projected 135.3. He
Damn,
has Austin
that's
Eckler,
close.
Mike Evans, and then Greg Dulcich playing right now. I
Uh,
have Saquon going tonight. I got Devontae Adams going right now, and then I got Christian Watson going Monday night. I hope
I
I
got
win.
Derrick Henry
I
in
mean, I got
just a few minutes, so I got to see that.
man, but hey, have a great rest of your evening, Rohan. Everyone that tuned in, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure, like Rohan just said, make sure you guys like and subscribe to both channels.
Yes, sir.